All right, everybody, hands up. NBA Finals betting picks coming your way right now. But real quick before we jump into the video, what are you guys doing? Do you want me to rip my hair out? Subscribe to the channel. Nearly 99% of you are not subscribers. Please, I am posting videos all the time. Betting insights, analysis, picks, trends, reactions, everything you could ask for. Keep it locked to the channel. I deeply appreciate it. Now let's get right into the betting picks. Remember, these are just trends, stats, and general information. These are not gospel. I don't have the script of what's coming. Always gamble responsibly, and let's get right into the video. Let's start off by talking about Nikola Jokic's assists market. That line is set at 9.5 on most major sports books. He is averaging 10.1 per game in the playoffs. He had 14 in game 1, but he only had 4 in game 2. Obviously, the Nuggets won game 1 and they lost game 2, so you would think they want to get back to him dishing the ball out. But don't just look at recent history, look at the entire season. If you combine the regular season and the postseason, the Nuggets are 42-6 in games where Jokic has double-digit assists. Remember, the line set at 9.5, so that double digits, that gets us to what has been a winning formula for the Nuggets. And while they are 42-6 when he has 10 or more assists, they are only 19-19 when he does not. So clearly, they do much better when he's dishing the ball out, and they're going to want to get back to that. Also, because he only had 4 last game, we know that changes are going to be coming, and I'm going to dive into those a little bit later on in this video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. The next market, Jimmy Butler threes. His line is set at 1.5. Now, Jimmy, even though he takes a lot more threes in the postseason than he does in the regular season, and even though he makes a lot more of them, and especially at a higher frequency, still, depending on him to make 2 threes, not totally sustainable. He had 1 in game 1, he had 2 in game 2, but look, there was also a big difference in the way that Jimmy Butler approached game 2. He only had 8 drives. This is per second spectrum. He only had 8 drives in game 1, and if you remember, the Heat shot a finals record low 2 free throws. They do not want that to happen again because that's not a winning formula. In game 2, Jimmy drove the ball 19 times. Now, yes, he got up his threes, and yes, he ended up making 2 threes in game 2, but his primary job was to be the initiator of the Miami offense a lot of the time, and when he wasn't doing that and it was Bam or maybe Gabe Vincent, he was just a decoy in the corner. He wasn't really getting a lot of off-ball actions. He wasn't diving to his spots to put up 3-pointers. It's just not his game, and I think that the Heat are going to tell Jimmy, we need you on defense. We need you applying rim pressure that does not feed him to him making 3-pointers. So 1.5, my lean would be on the under. The next market, Gabe Vincent points. This line started at 12.5. It's up to 14.5. Now, a number 1 rule of betting, always fade the public. We are seeing line movement in the over, which means that there is a lot of public support on the over. So historically, you would think you should go under. But with that being said, the line is moving up for a very clear reason. Vincent was the Heat's leading scorer in game 2 with 23. He had 19 in game 1. Obviously, that means that he's averaging 21 in the finals. He's averaging 18.8 over his last 6 games, and he has gone over his line and scored at least 15 plus in 5 of those last 6 games. The way the Nuggets defend Vincent, also, Jokic plays drop coverage on him, which if you don't know, means that when the pick and roll comes, just the pick, Jokic drops down a little bit, gives him a little bit of breathing space. Now, they have been stepping up. Jokic has been stepping up to guard Max Strus and Duncan Robinson, but he hasn't been doing that with Gabe Vincent. If he continues to do that, there's going to be space for Vincent to get his shots up, and he has been making most of them so far in these playoffs. Obviously, he's got the hot hand. Fade the public, keep that in mind, but also ride with the hot hand. Pick your poison on this one. Next market, Jokic threes. We're going to talk about Jokic a lot in this video because why wouldn't we, for a 2-time MVP, the guy who's on track to win Finals MVP if the Nuggets win this series, and potentially even if they lose this series. So Jokic's 3-point line is set at 1.5. You want to go for 2 plus, you want to go 1 or less. Here we go. Let's dive into it. So he made 2 last game. He only made 1 in game 1, but he's made 8 over his last 4 outings. He's also shooting 47% from 3-point land in the playoffs. It's just, he's out of his mind. He is burning hot from outside. Also, the way that the Nuggets are going to attack this Heat defense, I think it's going to be different, especially when the Heat go into that patented zone. So what the Heat were doing was they transitioned away from a typical 2-3, actually an atypical 2-3. The Miami The Miami Heat, they change it up a lot, but still a base 2-3 zone, and they went with more of a 2-1-2. They denied that an entry pass to Jokic at the nail, which is just the center of the free throw line, if you don't know. And he was able to not really get the ball in that area. Now, they could dump it to him in the low post on a few occasions, and he did punish them down there. But I think the counter for how the Nuggets get Jokic more involved, again, as a playmaker, is they have him bring the ball up the court. I think that, especially when they're in transition, I don't expect them to be dumping it off as much. And even coming off of timeouts, ATOs, or made shots, I think Jokic could be bringing the ball up and running the offense so that they can make sure he has the ball in his hands in a position to play make without being bothered by the Miami zone and just the Miami defense in general. Also, if Jokic is initiating the offense like that, there's going to be a lot of off-ball movement. There's going to be a lot of dribble handoffs for KCP and Jamal Murray. There's going to be a lot of screens and staggered screens, pick and rolls, pick and pops, all this stuff. All of that creates mismatches, and there's going to be defensive miscommunications here and there. Miami is a brilliant defensive team, but they aren't perfect. Jokic is more than capable of leaking out for a three-point shot. I would lean the over here. Again, this is not the gospel. I don't know what's going to happen. These are just trends and things to keep in mind when you are placing your bets. The next market, Bam Adebayo assists. That line is set at 4.5, and I do think that is a very fair line. Why? Well, in game 2, he had 5 assists, and in game 1, he had 4 assists, so hence 4.5. Now, Bam spent more time playing point center in game 2, not the same way that Jokic does, but in a similar sort of fashion where you have the center running the offense from the top of the key, sometimes in the mid post looking to attack off of the short roll or even post up at times. But a lot of the time it was just Bam has the ball at the top, waiting for the off-ball actions to happen, read the defense, make your move from there. Even if it's holding on to the ball, go with it. But it was Bam being the decision maker in the offense, mostly whenever Jimmy was either resting or just wasn't in the game. Now, part of having Bam being this point center means that Jokic has to be further away from the basket, even though he can still play his drop coverage. And even though the Nuggets do a lot of switching up on the perimeter, Jokic has to be standing further up the court so that Bam can't run into a little short roll, or he can't just go for a little floater, pull up for the mid-range, etc., etc. What that does is that creates space at the second level of the defense. Think about the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers. Because the Warriors were able to get Anthony Davis in the pick and roll and have him on Steph Curry, draw him away from the basket, think of all the passing interchange that opened up in the lane and under the basket in the restricted area and how many easy baskets the Warriors got. It won't be exactly the same because Bam is not a three-point threat. Jokic doesn't have to go up that far, but he's also not as quick, not as mobile, and not as good of a defender as Anthony Davis is. So there's going to be space there for the Heat to exploit. Also, if the Heat find themselves open on the three-point line, they're shooting and they are making more threes than any team in the playoffs. They're shooting 39.2%. They just shot 48% in the last game. Again, Bam finds an open shooter. Most of the time it's going down and it's money. Could be a good assist line to look at. Our final player prop, and then we're going to hop into a game prop. Michael Porter Jr. rebounds. His line is set at 7.5. Now, I will say this is a bit steep. I think maybe MPJ 6+ rebounds could be a good inclusion in a parlay if you are a parlay bettor, or if you're looking for quote unquote safe money, but I think there would be too much juice to bet there. But anyway, the reason I'm looking at MPJ in this rebound category is because, well, he had 13 boards in game 1 and he had 6 in game 2, even though he was benched pretty early. Now, why was he benched? He was being terrible with the ball in his hands. His decision-making was awful on offense. He couldn't get past Kevin Love off the dribble, and he was completely checked out and playing lackadaisical defense. None of that is going to work against the Miami Heat, and none of it's going to work in South Beach against the Miami Heat. Now, Michael Malone was beating it into his players in the post-game press conference, and I'm sure he's doing it at practices. We need to be more attentive. We need to have more effort, etc., etc. Now, MPJ, the stigma against him is that he doesn't do the little things, but he's been better this season, and he's been significantly better in the playoffs. I personally do have faith in him. I think that will be a shock moment, and he will be able to turn that switch back on. And if he does, he's averaging 8.2 rebounds per game in the playoffs. And again, the Nuggets, they're coming off a loss. This is not a must-win game, but definitely a would-love-to-have-it game. A lot of that comes with being active on the boards. They were able to dominate in game 1 with their size. I think MPJ is back up to his old ways, and the rebound market certainly becomes interesting. Again, 7.5, not totally sure there, but if you're looking for a 6+, or maybe you are looking for the 7.5, I think it's a good investment. And finally, our game prop, and I absolutely love this one. It is the Miami Heat fourth quarter money line. It's not the Heat money line. I personally do think the Nuggets are going to win this game, though I am expecting it to be close, and I'm totally open to being proven wrong. But what I do not think I will be proven wrong about is this Heat fourth quarter money line. Now, why? Well, in the series so far, they have won the fourth quarters by 10 and 11 points. And you might be thinking, well, one of those games is kind of out of hand. And the second one, Duncan Robinson scored 8 points in 1 minute. That's not going to happen again, blah, blah, blah. You are right. You are right. But it doesn't really matter because you can say, oh, this happened. Gabe Vincent scored 23 points. Oh, the Heat shot over 50% from three. That Caleb Martin had 25 points. They keep pulling things out of thin air that isn't really thin air. It's just a byproduct of the culture they have, the effort and discipline they play with, and the talent that they have on this roster, and also their coaching adjustments. They make stuff happen. And if you don't believe me, let's look at the playoffs so far. The Heat have played 20 games as far as plus minus or just raw scoring differential, aka how many points do you score versus how many points do you give up. The Heat have given up more points than they've scored in the first quarter and the second quarter and the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, they are outscoring opponents by 90 points. They have a history of being dominant in the fourth quarter. We have also seen in the fourth quarter in this series, they've spent a lot more time in the zone. And while the Nuggets found decent success against it in different spots in game one and game two, and I'm sure they will be coming with adjustments for game three, the simple fact that the defensive coverage has changed entirely from man to man, or even if they are in a zone before, if it's a 2-3 or it's a 1-3-1, the fact they were going to that 2-1-2 and making those changes, it just throws your rhythm off as the Nuggets team. You need to make adjustments. You need to settle into it. You need to diagnose it and gain some comfortability and familiarity with it. All of that is going to help the Heat, and I do think that this fourth quarter moneyline game prop, like I said, it's my favorite, and I would be looking to it to hit, and I am going to be betting this one personally. Guys, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you know what to do. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Drop a like on the video to let me know that you did enjoy it. Comment, let me know what you think of these prop markets. And again, I'm not outright saying go over or go under. I'm just giving you some general trends. But what you do with that information, it's up to you. But I would like to know. So comment, let me know what you are doing. Keep it locked. I've got all sorts of analysis, insights, betting picks, betting predictions, trends, reactions, everything that you could possibly ask for the rest of these finals coming out. You don't want to miss it. So until I see you all next time, thank you so much for tuning in and have a great day.